Countdown for the final budget of the first budget of the Modi government, rather. It's of course the first one of the Modi 3.0 term has begun. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, of course, will be presenting the Union Budget 2024 tomorrow at 11 a.m. This budget is crucial as it sets the tone for the government, economic policies and priorities for the coming year. This will be the first budget of the newly elected NDA government led by PM Narendra Modi for the third term. And let's quickly, of course, take you through first big expectations from this budget 2024. So let's quickly take you through what all perhaps can be expected in this budget. What are the big expectations of analysts, of economists, of the country? Expectation number one has to do with taxation, where clearly, of course, a possible increase in the threshold could take place for the 30% tax rate from 15 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees. So something for the vis-a-vis taxation could be done. That's expectation number one. Expectation number two also is in the taxation domain, where taxable incomes may increase from 7 lakh rupees to 7.5 lakh rupees. That's also something that could happen in this budget. Meanwhile, expectation number three, exemption limit on long-term capital gains could increase from 1 lakh rupees to 2 lakh rupees. That's also something that could happen in this budget. Meanwhile, we're also expecting a high allocation for capex for infrastructure as well as construction sectors, possibly 11.11 lakh crore rupees. That's also something that this budget could entail. Meanwhile, we're learning that in environment too, sustainable development may be prioritized, renewable energy, green infrastructure, sustainable agri projects. All of this could also be focused on by the government. Also in the environment sector, the government might introduce incentives and regulations to promote ESG compliance amongst businesses. All of this is also something that could happen in the budget. Meanwhile, expectation number 7 pertains to the education sector. A likely focus on expanding digital access in rural areas is likely. So that is something that could certainly happen as well. PMJY outlay likely to be raised to 10,000 crore rupees. That's also something that is likely in this budget vis-a-vis healthcare. So the healthcare sector also could see this outlay being increased. Also, if we talk about agriculture now, expectation number 9 is 86,000 crores for Manrega. And increased funding for PM Gram Sadak Yojana and PM Kisan Samman Nidhi is also likely. Let's quickly go across to the next expectation, if we can. Expectation number 10 also pertains to the agriculture sector, where continuity and further expansion towards DBT initiatives and credit net for farmers is likely as well. Meanwhile, expectation number 11, defense sector, the push for Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense may lead to increased allocation for domestic production as well. Also, in the defense sector, private sector expected to cover 50% of India's defense production in the next decade. Let's quickly move across to the next expectation that pertains to the automobile sector. More initiatives such as PLI scheme for EVs, expanding manufacturing of hybrid electric vehicles in India is also likely. And if we talk about semiconductors, more collaboration expected to help India emerge as a key player. This is something that could happen as well in the semiconductor space. Also, if in semiconductors, the reduction in income tax rates for annual income of 10 lakh rupees is also something that could be on the anvil. Okay, well, let's quickly throw this open to our panel that's joining us live as well. Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, Indian Space Association, is live with us. Major General Dhruv Katush, defense expert, joins us live. Sumit Peer, political commentator, is live with us. Dr. P.S.V. Rao, consultant surgeon, Manipal Hospital, Hebbal, Bengaluru, also live with us. Sumit P, let me begin with you first. Big expectations is the first budget of the Modi 3.0 term. What are your expectations? What could be on the anvil, Sumit?
Uday, thank you for having me on your show. Well, what we expect are a couple of things. First of all, we are expecting some kind of a relief for the middle class, because that has not happened for quite some time. And if this taxable income slab can be increased to say 10 or 12 lakhs, some people have been talking 15 lakhs, but that might be a big call, but 10 or 12 lakhs, because in today's time, you need around 1 lakh of rupees to run a house and bring up your kids. That is what the middle class will really, really aspire for. And that this 30% slab has to be again adjusted what you propose. That's a wonderful thing. Second thing, what I would want, what my expectation would be is to increase the budget for the defense, because country, you have to increase the budget for the defense. That is pretty much required. We need a budget for internal security separately, which has nothing to do with the current defense budget. And third thing we need to do is we have to put more money in education sector and on the health sector. These are the 5 things which are on my agenda, which are very, very sacrosanct for the country to grow, because, in the long run, the people who will have maximum IP are the people who are going to rule the world. To have the maximum IP, we have to put more money on the education sector. We have to increase our medical infrastructure. We have to increase the number of medical seats. You see, today, we have thousands of our kids doing MBBS in Bangladesh. That is the tyranny of our times. When we produce the highest number of engineers in the world, how can our kids go to the neighboring countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan even to do their MBBS? So these are the things which need to be revamped. And this is thing what middle class would want to say. And the infrastructure push has to carry on. We have to incentivize research. We are right now filing the highest number of patents in the world. And I think this has to keep on increasing. And again, there should be schemes which should be brought in for unitary entrepreneurship. All startups are good, they're fine and great, but at the end of the day, everybody cannot start a startup. The unitary entrepreneurship is the model where the country can go to the next level. These are the expectations, because, it can go to a village, it can go to a gully, it can go to a mohalla and a kasbah. That is what the country would need right now. Because today the notion of a startup is, something like xyz.com or whatever. This thing has to go. And again, what is important is we have to define what is a startup. Startup is not only when you employ 20 people, I look for a VC funding and talk about valuations. No, even anything which is entrepreneurially sustainable and contributing to the country's growth and society should be classified as a startup. Then we can really have these startups mushrooming across the length and breadth of the country. And the good thing of that will be they will not be dependent on VC money or anything. It will be self-sustaining, profitable from few months of inception. And this will ultimately solve the rural employment problem. This will solve the rural distress. Our dependence of agriculture will be reduced by this. And by the virtue of that, with Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Vocal for Local, one district, one product, combine it with that will be a big boost to these all initiatives, wherein our youth and our people will be employed. The challenge of the country is, Uday, still we have 23% of the women only in the workforce. If you look at China, it's 67. If you look at the Western countries, it's quite high. Now, what are we doing to get balance? I don't know, 100 is not possible, but let's target somewhere around 70%. So what are we doing to get balance? 43% of the women into workforce. And if these women start getting into the workforce, the amount of GDP contributions can be phenomenal. Now, this budget will look for all these things. Besides defense, besides health, and besides education, these are the things and Ministry of Internal Security, which I have been really asking for, because the threats are not only geopolitical, there are also threats which are emerging within the country. There are forces which are trying to divide us. There are forces which are trying to, sabotage a lot of things within the country. And Uday, if I can be very candid with you, when you're taking the manufacturing from China, if you're taking the manufacturing from all other places of the world, and you're emerging as the third largest economy, which we are, there are a lot of people, sir, which will not let you breathe and live easily. They will not let you grow easily. They will not give you a cakewalk. When your economy is growing at the highest pace, they will not let you walk. So we have to be prepared to handle those challenges. And so that is why this all Ministry of Internal Security is pretty much required. And with that, let's have more and more money put in the R&D, because, if we keep on exceeding in filing patents for next 5 or 7 years, next 15 to 20 years, we will have our dominance on the IP. Anybody who has to grow in the world, look at Israel, a small country, but they have really controlled some sectors where they control the IP. The dominance over the IP is the new thing, and let's redefine the startup. Tell our youth, tell our young and old, anything unitary, even if it's a 1% thing that is making money, contributing to the country, contributing to the society, it is a startup and you are a successful entrepreneur. This definition of startup has to be revamped within the country. These are my 5 or 7 major expectations, Uday, talking over and above what you have described.
Absolutely. Let me take that across to Major Katoch as well. Major Katoch, a lot could be on the anvil for the defense sector. What are your expectations and what are your reactions to NewsX's expectations from the defense sector announcements tomorrow?
Thank you, Uday. Uday, I'll just give you my composite list. On tax slabs, my view is slightly different. When we're looking at a country like Singapore, the maximum tax limit, and that is made universal for most people, is 10%. So what happens is nobody really avoids taxes in Singapore, and there is that stress on consumption. Now, I think we need to get that stress on consumption here in India also, especially as Sumit said, for the middle class. Uh, I would go in for raising that upper edge limit, which you had mentioned. You had talked to 20 lakhs. 20 lakhs means that basically a chap's income is about 1.5 lakhs or 2 lakhs per annum. And that is still quite a small amount. I would say that you take that upper edge, the beyond 30% limit, taxation of 30% should be above 25 lakhs. Now, that will give substantive relief as far as the middle class is concerned. And I think it is also going to lead to a substantial upgrade as far as consumption patterns are concerned. Another thing, a very large number of this black money keeps floating around based on agricultural income. Now, I'm not saying that you tax agricultural income, but I'm saying, you exempt agricultural income from tax up to a certain level. You could put that level as 25 lakhs or 30 lakhs. And, when the chap the person files their income tax returns, they can simply say, okay, income tax that exemption, and you take that 25 or 30 lakhs out. But beyond that, people have been really fooling the system as far as this is concerned. And I think we need to, I hope that at some point of time, with this budget or in subsequent budgets, that needs to be addressed. The third thing, and after this, I'll get on to the defense sector, a large portion of the government spending is on EWS, those welfare programs, free food, rations, etc., for the poor. Now, I'm not denying it. The poor need it. So it must be given. But I think it is high time also it is linked to certain other social factors which we are looking into. And I think it is high time we started linking it to small family norms. We cannot grow our population at this particular rate the way we are going. Today, our population is equivalent to that of China, and we have crossed China. When we are looking at 2050, from the present levels, China would have reduced its population by about 30 to 50 million from today's levels. Whereas at 2050, India's population is slated to go up by another 200 million people. Now, everything which we are doing to improve the productivity and the economy of the country is really becoming rendered null and void because we are not being able to really handle this population rise. China is going to grow very wealthy because they have handled it. We are not. So I think anytime we give out a welfare scheme, whether it is in education or whether it is in free food, etc., it should be linked to small family norms universally. And that, I think, could create an impact. The MSME sector, I think as far as the economy is concerned, it needs to be incentivized to a very, very great extent. That is what is going to create those middle-level jobs and get India up into the upper level of becoming a medium-sized industrial power. On this medical push, I think one of the things which they need to do is digitalize. Digital consultancy. It is on the anvil, I presume, but this in the rural areas we find it very difficult for the people to go and get specialized help. Now that is the one. If you can make centers which connect about 10 to 15 districts and have one center there which is connected to the rural areas, then that sort of connectivity, that consultancy can be provided to the poorest of India's poor at the very first instance. I think that would be helpful. The time has come, when we are in Delhi, we see the amount of pollution which is there. Now, it doesn't really matter what we do, but we've got to disincentivize people coming in. There has to be a ban on construction, which means that you have to incentivize people who are moving to the suburbs. How that can be done, I hope the budget can also look into that. Getting down to the specifics of the budget, I think there is an absolute need to increase the defense budget. We cannot function without it now. I'm not saying that it should be done in terms of the percentage of the GDP or something. That doesn't really matter. But the question is that budget needs to be increased to cater for our specific requirements to deal with triple threats. One is on the China border, the second is on the Pakistan border, and the third is on the maritime sector. The fourth, of course, is internal security, but I presume certain other funds will be used for that. Unless we get our Security Act in order, that economic development which we are looking at is not going to take place. On defense, I feel that we need to put in huge budgets as far as R&D is concerned and get in the private sector into a much larger extent. And to that extent, the defense PSUs, they need to be gradually shedded. Either they should work in coordination with the private sector or the role must be diminished henceforth. no longer can the state continue to manufacture lower end items using defense PSUs. That should be best left to the Indian industry. The defense PSUs, I feel, should be given higher funding for research and development at the upper end of technologies, such as semiconductors. The budget for semiconductors, I hope they put it in. It has to be huge. We cannot simply say 10,000 crores or 20,000 crores. You may start looking at a budget of 1 lakh crore simply for the semiconductor industries to get India to where we need to be. Uday.
Yes, let me also, in fact, get in Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt in at this point for, of course, the space sector's expectations as well from the budget. Also, General Bhatt, you can, of course, comment on the defense sector as well. What are your expectations? It's Modi 3.0's first budget. We will get a roadmap for the next 5 years. What are you expecting?
The space sector, a lot of impetus has been given to it ever since the government had announced privatization of space in 2000. And this has moved from the highest office in India, from the PMO's office, and has had results on ground. Today, we are proud of 2 private companies which have had suborbital launches and will very soon have orbital launches. We have 4 to 5 companies which have launched satellites just in the small period of after the announcement of it. Now, all these companies, to be effective economically, to compete internationally, have to be given financial incentives by the government. And the first and the foremost is, I would talk of GST. The government had announced exemption for satellite launch services. This GST benefit has to expand to other sectors. It has to go to ground stations, for satellites, for critical components, and many more. The entire space sector needs to be incentivized by lower GSTs. This is my first point. The second issue is tax exemptions and tax holidays. If we have to allow this sector to grow, from startups to effective part of the entire space economy of the world, we have to give them tax exemptions and tax holidays to incentivize this sector to grow further. The details of this we have already put across to the government. Also, even there has to be a reduction on the tax rate on the interest on foreign borrowings. FDI has been announced in the space sector, which is really welcome. It varies from 100% to 49% depending on which vertical it is. But what is most important is, even in foreign borrowings, the tax rate today paid by our startups, by our companies, is very high. It is a small effort or a small gesture which will help these startups to save more money and put it into R&D where it is required. The PLI, which is a scheme which has really produced results in some other industrial domains, needs to be extended to the space sector. Again, here, I would not go into the details, but there are specific space-grade components which need PLI incentives as is being given for some electronic and other domains. And most importantly, this is much more important for the sector to grow. The government has to give a commitment to consume new space sector products. What I mean by this is, say today, if you have to make a road, if you use solutions which are there from space, it will be done in a more efficient manner. But it requires government's push for using that, adopting it for urban constructions, for road construction, and many more things. I'll stop here.
Okay, come in here, Dr. Rao, on of course, the expectation for the healthcare sector. We've listed some of our expectations as well. Your reaction to, what we've put out in these points that could be on the anvil, and what you are expecting from the FM for your sector and the medical and healthcare sector.
Good evening. Uday and panelists and all the viewers. My major request I have already put out in the article I wrote yesterday in the in the Business Guardian, part of the Sunday Guardian. You see, I have detailed out how India had a head start with telemedicine. It has digitized many of the records, and now it has started a Kendra in Jan Aushadhi Kendra in Mauritius. I want Indian government and this budget to give a major flip to this Ministry of, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and through the Health Ministry, to put up these kendras worldwide, especially in the global south. There should be a huge budget kept for that. And through these, we can increase the export of pharma, export of various devices, vaccines, all through these, because it eliminates the middlemen and it eliminates the bad players who often bring disrepute to our exports. It also circumvents many of the non-tariff barriers that are thrown at our exports. Increasing pharma, including vaccine that is, and the medical devices and equipment export can be a huge booster to our economy and needs a special arrangement. And ISRO had set up various satellite-based nodes all over India. This can be done all over the world. And I had listed how India had helped in setting up a Pan-African network, a network in our experts had helped in North Korea, in some of the nations of ASEAN and Central Asia. This is one thing that I am emphasizing on. The second thing is my co-panelists have spoken about the space sector, about the electronics and semiconductor sector, and the defense sector. Now, you can have huge budgets and put up these industries, but who is going to run them? You need the skilled workers for it. And this again is something I have been emphasizing in my previous articles. We don't have employable, skilled people coming out of our colleges and institutions. This is where the industry and the educational institutions have to be, come together. And for that, a budget push has to be given, especially all the companies are required to do some amount of social work. That thing should be pushed towards starting educational training and skill training in the industrial campuses. You see, many of the countries abroad, the higher education, this has been repeatedly mentioned in it, and it is true of even our among us doctors and paramedical workers. The training is in the hospital, the training is not in the medical college. Have all this higher education, basic education in the college, but all higher education and skill things in the institution. So if you can have these people being trained in the hospital, same way these people can be trained in the defense industry, in the space industry, in the various other electronic and whatever semiconductor industries. Otherwise, you won't have the skilled workers to run those institutions. There's no point putting up an institution and no one to work. So you see the job opportunities. Now, whenever there is a survey of the public, the emphasis that the public says is that we want health, we want education, we want food, and we want skills, jobs. Now, the jobs can't be offered through government jobs. There is a limit to what government jobs you can have. So you should get the private industry to do the skilling. And for that, the budget can give a huge push by telling all industries, you will get a big relief in your taxes, provided you start training people for jobs in your institution rather than it being in the college. So they can come together and have the training in the institution.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.